For most of human history, expertise created authority. The person who knew the most usually had the most influence. The engineer or scientist, financial expert, the person with years of experience. But something's changed. Today, many experts are discovering a frustrating reality. They can be the most knowledgeable person in the room and still lose the room. Not because they're wrong, but because someone else knows how to communicate what they know in a way people can understand, trust, and even act on. We often assume that influence follows intelligence. We think, if people understood the facts, they would agree. Or if I provide enough evidence, people will recognize the truth. Even if I explain the complexity, they will appreciate my expertise. But human beings do not make decisions based on information alone. They make decisions based on meaning. They need to understand, why does this matter? What problem does this solve? What should I do next? And this is where many experts struggle. They are trained to be accurate, but they are rarely trained to be understood. The biggest mistake experts make is confusing complexity with credibility. They believe that the more detail they provide, the more intelligent they appear. But the opposite often happens. The audience becomes overwhelmed. The decision becomes unclear. And the expert accidentally creates distance between themselves and the people they're trying to influence. Think about two people explaining the same problem. The first person might say something like this: based on our analysis of multiple variables, including market conditions, operational constraints, historical performance indicators, and projected incomes or projected outcomes, there are several potential approaches we should evaluate. Technically, it's accurate, but what does the listener remember? Almost nothing. I had a hard time saying it myself. Now imagine someone says, we have one major problem. If we do not solve it in the next 6 months, it costs us customers and limits our growth. Here are the two decisions we need to make. Same intelligence, different impact. The second person created clarity, and clarity creates authority. This problem is becoming even more important because we live in a world where information is abundant. Artificial intelligence can summarize research, search engines can provide answers, technology can make expertise accessible to almost everyone. The advantage is shifting. For decades, the question was, who knows the most? Increasingly, the question is becoming, who can help people understand what matters? The future does not belong only to people with knowledge. It belongs to people who can transform knowledge into decisions. Now, this does not mean experts should simplify everything. That is another common mistake. Good communication is not about making ideas smaller. It's about making ideas transferable. A true expert can move between levels. They can discuss technical details with specialists and then explain the same concept to a customer or executive or an employee without losing the core idea. The ability to translate complexity is not a reduction of expertise. It is evidence of deeper expertise, because if you truly understand something, you can explain why it matters. The most influential communicators are not necessarily the people with the most knowledge. They're the people who understand three things. First, they understand the audience's problem. They do not begin with something like this: here's everything I know. They begin with something more like this: what does this person need to solve? Secondly, they understand the decision. Every conversation has a decision hidden inside it. What needs to change? What action needs to happen? What belief needs to shift? And third, they understand attention, because attention is the gateway to influence. If people cannot follow your message, they cannot act on your expertise. This creates an uncomfortable reality. Some experts are not losing influence because they lack knowledge. They're losing influence because they have made knowledge the center of their identity. They want people to recognize how much they know. But powerful communicators focus on something different. They make other people feel capable of understanding. And that difference changes everything. The goal is not to prove I am the smartest person here. The goal is to create the moment where someone else says, now I understand what needs to happen. In the future, expertise will still matter. Deep knowledge will always have value, but knowledge alone will not create influence. The people who lead, persuade, and create change will be the people who can connect knowledge with human understanding, because information can be stored, answers can be generated, but the ability to create clarity when things are uncertain, that remains deeply human. And that may become the most valuable communication skill of all.